Okay. So keep staring at the icon. And what do you think the icon is saying? What's the meaning behind this thing? Any thoughts?
It looks like the Lord wants to enter, but he's ashamed to let him in.
That's perfect. That's exactly right. So, if you look at the top, which you guys can't read, I'm trying to zoom in a little bit, but the screen's still a little small. At the very top it says, "Here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and dine with that person and they with me." And you guys know this is from the book of Revelation. This is a very famous verse. That Christ stands and he knocks at the door. And if you notice, I want you to look at the door he's knocking on. Every icon that depicts this scene always has the same characteristic of the door. What do you guys notice about the door? There's no handle, right? So the door he's knocking on can't be opened from the outside. It has to be opened from the inside. So Christ stands, he knocks at the door, and even if you say, "Come in," he can't come in. You have to open it. And he cannot open it, which is amazing, given that he's God and all. There's a lot of things he can do. Walk on water, make chickens, squirrels. But letting you in is only something that you can do. Letting him in is only something that you can do. And what is that called? There's a word for it, a fancy word for it. Something we have, that God gave us. Free will. And once God gave us free will, he's stuck with it. So he gave us this free will to choose anything, including not him. Can you imagine? Your parents don't even give you that kind of free will. Right? You don't get to choose not my parents. You don't get to choose, where you live, when you're young. And God says, you can choose anything. I make you. I provide for you. I give you. And if you want to choose not me, feel free. And once he made us that way, then he's kind of he's stuck with the ramifications of that. And the ramifications are what? People choose not him all the time. People curse, people hate, people turn, right? And it started from his very first creation, Adam and Eve. So he basically says, I want to come in, but I will never open the door. And we talked about this a little bit at St. Paul's a few weeks ago about forcing Christianity. Right? This is a very popular pastime of parents, but it's impossible, right? It's like, the old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but how's it go? But you can't make him drink, right? You can't make a horse drink water. Even if they're thirsty, they won't, right? So you can put a kid in church, but you can't make him a Christian. You can teach him hymns, but you can't make him pray. You can force them to serve, but you can't make them love. Right? So this freedom that we have is really amazing. And I have the freedom to hurt myself. And I have the freedom to hurt others. And I have the freedom to hurt God. Can I hurt God? Can you hurt him? Absolutely. Can you hurt anyone who loves? The easiest person to hurt is what? Someone who loves, right? Someone who hates, you can't hurt someone who hates, right? I can physically, I suppose, shoot him, right? But if someone hates me and I hate them, what am I going to say that's going to hurt them? Nothing. But if someone loves, then you can hurt them. If someone loves you, you can hurt them. In fact, the most painful experiences you've had in your lives, if you think back about the people who hurt you the most, who really cut deep, were people what? You loved. Because they were what? On the inside. You let them in. And then they hurt you from the inside. So can I hurt God? Sure. And does he feel that pain? Absolutely. And so this freedom is really like one of the outstanding characteristics of a human being. Like if you look at an animal, animals have instincts. And they just kind of act. And they don't really think. And they don't decide. And they don't weigh. And they don't, pros and cons. They just kind of instinctually act. But a human has this power to think and to reason and to debate. And so Christ stands and he says, I stand knocking at the door and I want to come in and have dinner with you. And he gives all the power to the creation, which is really very amazing, very humble. Right? Can you imagine if I gave, I went to my 4-year-old and said, should we buy a new house? And the 4-year-old said, yeah. I'm like, okay, let's go buy a new house, everybody. And my wife goes, that's a 4-year-old. You just asked. And but I gave him all the power to make all the decisions in our home. It's kind of a crazy thing to do, but yet God does that, right? And we see that very clearly in the story of the prodigal son, right? When the prodigal son says, I want half the money so I can go hang out with the harlots and Jesus says, okay. God says, okay, here you go. It's really shocking. And it's something we don't give to each other, right? We get this freedom of will from God, but then we don't want others to have freedom of will. We want to control them. We want to impose our will on them. When we see them act in a way inconsistent with the way we want them to act, we let them know. We don't just let them be. No, you need to do it like this. You need to act like this. You need to think like this. We need to go here. And so, although we're given this gift, we often don't reciprocate it. Why not? Because we're not in the image and likeness of our Father. Because if we were really in the image and likeness of our Father, then we'd act like him. And what does he do? He says, do whatever you want. There's a quote by St. Augustine, and he says, love God and do whatever you want. And if you look at the way the fathers thought, very open-minded, very deep, very profound. They never forced anyone to do anything. Because that doesn't work. That's not Christianity. That's Islam, right? There's the 5 tenets of Islam. If you do the 5 things, you go to heaven, right? You have to fast Ramadan, you have to do a Hajj, you have to go to the mosque 5 times. I forget the other 2. There's 5 things. Do the things, go to heaven, win-win. And it doesn't matter that I'm at the mosque and I'm not thinking about God, or I couldn't care less, or I don't want to be there, or I hate doesn't matter. Do it. Shut up and do it. Shut up and fast Ramadan. My driver in Egypt, Yasser, and I know it's Yasser, he was telling me that in Ramadan, he can't drink enough water in the summer. It's really hot. Like Ramadan, you can't eat or drink all day, right? And so at night, all night, he would just drink water. And he would say there's these salts in his body and he needed to get them out. And there's too much salt in his body and his doctor's warning him. And so he said before the blast at 5 a.m. to end the fast, to start the fast the next day, it's like 4:59. He's like, oh my God, it's 4:59. I'm going to start drinking water. So he starts guzzling water as fast as he can. And he said the metfa, which is called, the blast or whatever, the alarm went off, in the streets. And he was still drinking. What do you think his family did? It's a second. The thing just went off. They ran as fast as they could, and they knocked the water off his face. like he had a bottle, and he said they knocked the bottle off my, I was drinking and it went and broke. That's the God. Do we worship that kind of God? In some of your homes you do. There's people who think our fast should be like that. There's people who live our fast like that. That's not our fast. Right? Okay, so let's go back. Christ does not impose on us. We come to church. Coming to church isn't going to buy you some magic stardust that you get 17 points every time you show up to a liturgy. Right? It's about the heart. And the heart comes in a second. So he's standing knocking at the door, and this other guy, who's Peter, if you will, Peter just sold Christ out. And he's not opening the door. Why not? This is us. Why won't he open the door? Why don't you open the door?
Afraid God's gonna judge him, or he's ashamed.
He's ashamed. He's afraid God's going to judge him.
What's the guilt?
He's got guilt. There's a verse in the Gospel of John chapter 3, and it says, men did not like the light because the light exposed their evil deeds. Are there people who don't like the light? Yeah. Are there people who like to stay in the shadows and hidden? Yeah. God exposes. Yeah.
Is it okay to feel shame, but not lock yourself away?
We'll get there in a sec. So what this guy's experience is what many of us experience. Okay? He's ashamed. He feels guilty because the light is going to expose him. What else do you think he's worried about? Why else won't he open the door? Maybe he's scared of the consequence. Because you see, when you let Christ in, now he's in. What's he going to do now? You don't know. You can't control him. What did Christ do on Palm Sunday when he came into the temple of our hearts? What did he do? They let him in. He looks like a nice guy. He's wearing sandals, Birkenstocks. Can't be too bad. Heals people, says love things. He's a nice guy. What did he do? He flipped tables like a madman. Can you imagine a table full of coins and you flip it over? It's quite a look. So when he came into the temple, and we say the temple is us, what did he do? He flips tables. So when God comes into our lives, what's he going to do? He's going to flip tables. Which tables is he going to flip? The corrupt ones, the money changers, the love of the world, the love of material things. He's going to come in and he's going to make it go upside down. That's what Jesus does. He comes in and he flips. And so another possibility is this guy doesn't want to open because he's kind of scared of what's going to happen. Maybe I really like my life. Maybe I really like to do the things I do. Maybe I really like my life the way it is. I don't want to change. I don't want to be good. I don't want God. Can that be a possibility? Do I love a sin so much that I'm like, I'm really not interested in giving that up right now? I'm kind of into that one. So I'm going to hang on to it. God comes in, he's going to say, get rid of it, not interested. Is that another possibility? Absolutely. And so his shame, and I think shame is the key one, is paralyzing him. He wants to open, but he's too ashamed. He's too embarrassed. Is he unique? He's all of us. He's all of us. And one of you said he's afraid to be judged by God. What's God like?
He's kind.
You're all wearing masks. I can't tell who's speaking.
Loving.
Loving. How loving is he? Is he compassionate? He's not compassionate. He is compassion. He isn't loving. He is love. He doesn't show you the truth. He is the truth. He doesn't show you the way. He is the way. He isn't merciful. He is mercy. So you take whatever mercy you think you got and every compassion you have, and you just multiply it by infinity. And then you have God. And every once in a while people will be like, I can't believe God would judge someone like that. God is so mean. First of all, did he tell you? Did you get a memo saying this happened? Like a post on Instagram? How did you know God, what exactly God did? First question. Second question, as merciful as you think you are, and as sweet and compassionate as you think you are towards other people, you're nothing compared to the compassion of God. Right? Because people aren't nice. People aren't nice, right? You think you're nice. But you just see your posts to each other. You're not nice, right? You see when someone burns you. You see how you act. We're not that nice. I'm not. You guys know that. And so wait till someone burns you and then you're not nice. So he's worried about Christ coming in, but yet he has nothing to worry about. Because what's Christ going to do when he comes in? He's going to throw his arms around him. And he's going to show him love beyond words. Again, the prodigal son. The prodigal son's practicing the whole walk home because he knows his dad's going to hit him with the hazam, the belt. He knows his dad's going to give him a few choice words. His dad's going to lay into him. And his dad does what? He throws his arms around him. But before he does that, he does what? He runs to him. And what was the son doing? Walking. So the son was walking, probably slowly. He's probably dragging it out. When you go to something you don't want to go to? You go real slow, right? Your parents want you to go to a wedding. You don't want to go to the wedding. So what do? I'm going to get dressed really slowly, right? I don't want to go. And so the kid is walking, and then God runs like a crazy guy. And I want to ask you another question. When did God start running? When did the father and the prodigal son start, and the prodigal son parable start running? He said when he saw him in the distance. Okay. So what are you imagining right now? Dad's on the porch. He's rocking back and forth. Maybe he's eating some corn. It's random. And he sees his son in the distance. His son's maybe half a mile away, right? And then he sees him. He goes, there's my son. Looks like him. I think he's got the same hair. That's him. I'm going to start running for him. That's probably what happened. It's a parable. We don't know it. There's nothing that should happen. But I want to propose to you another alternative story. The father is whom again in this parable? He's God. So the son is in a faraway village, and the son comes to himself and says, you know what, I'm freaking in a pigsty. I'm eating pig's food. I'm disgusting. By the way, this is the state of sin. You wake up one day and you're like, I'm in a pigsty. I live like a pig. Right? I live like an animal. This is no way for a human being to live, right? And this is when people wake up in their own vomit, or they wake up after being in a car crash because they're drunk, or they wake up after the ninth bad relationship, and they just kind of wake up. And we all wake up at some point. And he turns and he says, I'm going to start walking towards Dad. Okay? And I say something funny. Okay. Share if I did. And so he says, I'm going to start walking towards Dad. And Dad is what again? Who again? God. So maybe as soon as the son woke up woke up to himself, and he turned around and he started walking, he still has like a 3 days journey. Maybe that's when the dad saw him and started running. Maybe the son didn't walk very far at all. Maybe the son just thought about it and said, you know what? I'm going to go back to my dad. Yeah, I'm going to go back to my dad. I'm going to get up and I'm going to turn around. And as soon as he did, his dad, 5 days away journey, started running towards him. Is that all you need to do to go back to God? Yeah, that's it. You don't have to, span the distance. You don't have to say, well, I'm going to get back to a certain point and then God will come after me. As soon as the thought crosses, God's already on his way. What does it say over the guy? It's a beautiful quote. It says, you cannot escape shame except by shame. You cannot escape shame except by shame. The demons persuade us not to confess. Lay bare your wound to the physician. So the quote above him is saying, I know you're shamed. I know you're ashamed. And you can't get out of the shame except by shame. So I'll read you the whole quote. It says, do not be deceived, son and obedient servant of the Lord, by the spirit of conceit, so that you confess your own sins to your master as if they were another person's. You cannot escape shame except by shame. It is often the habit of the demons to persuade us either not to confess or to do so as if we were confessing another person's sins. How many people have gone to confession and say, let me tell you, Habibi, let me tell you what she did. Let me tell you what he did. Okay, but let me tell you then what else he did. And then let me tell you what else she did. Whose sins are you confessing again? Lay bare your wound to the physician, and without being ashamed say, it is my wound, Father. It is my plague caused by my own negligence and not by anything else. No one is to blame for this. No man, no spirit, no body, nothing but my own carelessness. St. John Climacus of the Divine. He wrote the book, The Ladder of Divine Ascent. And so what he's basically saying is the only way we get rid of our own shame is to open ourselves up. Does that make sense? Is that something we see in the world? Is that something we see in biology? And say you've got an infection and it gets real bad, and you've got a cut and now it's infected. What do you got to do? You got to clean that thing out. Sometimes you got to cut it open and pour some alcohol in it. And what does the alcohol do? It stings. It hurts. But unless you open that thing up, if you want to close it up with all the dirt and all the infection inside, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. I mean, we all know about cancer, right? What do? You got to cut it open, cut the human being open, and you got to get that stuff out of there. You got to kill all of it. Why? Because it just grows and grows and grows inside you. And so what we do is we're afraid to let him in because we don't want that light to hit us. Because I'm ashamed of it and I don't want to see myself. I don't want to see my own ugliness. I don't want to see my own brokenness. I'm ashamed of it. And the light exposes me. I'll read some other quotes. St. Ephraim the Syrian says, I who condemned, all covered with wounds and filled with despondency, how shall I lift my gaze to meet thy grace, O Master? How shall I find the boldness to move my impure, polluted tongue? How shall I begin my confession? I am not worthy to behold thy holy name. I cannot stand before thee in prayer. I cannot look up and behold the heights of heaven. My conscience exposes my mind's error. In my heart I cover my face with shame. Before the judgment that awaits me, I condemn myself. And it kind of follows what Adam said. After Adam sinned, what was his reaction? Shame, guilt. In fact, Adam said what? I heard your voice and I did what? I hid. It's the same icon. It's the same story. And this is our reaction. I don't want to be around holiness. I don't want to be around holy people. I don't want anyone to see what's inside. And the reason we don't want anyone to see what's inside is because of the other part of shame, which is isolation. Of course, a big problem with COVID. I mean, one of the reasons, say you're alcoholic. How do you get fixed? How do alcoholics get fixed? Where do they go? AA program, right? AA meetings. What do you do at an AA meeting? Say, hi, my name is Mark. I'm an alcoholic. And everyone says, hi, Mark. And they say, tell us about yourself. And what do? Do I hide it? Do I say, I'm not really an alcoholic, but my wife just drives me crazy, so I drink a little bit, but it's really her fault? Is that going to work? You going to get better? They say denial is not just another river in Egypt. It's a joke. Took you a second. Hashtag Archie's funny. Okay. And so you go to an AA meeting, right? And what do? You expose yourself. And you say, here's my problem. Here's what's broken in me. And who do you expose yourself to? Other broken people. Does the church do something like this? Did it used to?
Yes.
When?
Way back when they used to do public confession.
Back in the day when they used to do public confessions. And we think of public confessions like, oh my God, no. Why do you think that? Yeah. I think it's the first time someone said, so I stole a bunch of money from him. And you're like, oh, you did? And then he comes at me with a knife, and then it probably ended poorly. But imagine a place, a church, a community, a group of people where they talk to each other and they confess openly. That happens all the time. It can. Right? You can have a meeting where people just talk about what's broken. And everyone else just goes, yeah, I'm broken too. And unfortunately, we have a situation where people are judgmental. People are worried about gossip. People are worried about, oh, they're going to tell everyone else what's going on in my life. It's horrible, but it's true. And I wish that one day when you guys are older and you're no longer part of this gossip culture, that you can get together and have meetings. And I mean, I'm just going to be open about it, right? We have at our church a men's meeting and a women's meeting. And the stuff that's said in the women's meeting is very private and very secret. And women talk about their problems with their husbands and their problem with their kids and their problem with their lives very openly. And all the women respect and hold that trust. And it just brings you closer. Have you ever heard someone tell you what's broken in them? What does it make you feel? Close. When someone says, I've got a problem, and they tell you their problem, you're like, wow, we're close now. Because the boundaries went down. The vulnerability went up. And this is the community that we're supposed to be in. A community of Christians who expose our sins to both God and to each other. What do we do instead? We try to hide the sins, and what do we expose? My talents, my abilities, what I've done, who I know, what I know. Right? So I'm exposing everything good about me, and I'm hiding everything bad. And the gospel tells us to do what? The exact opposite. Expose the bad and hide the good. take the talent, put it in the ground, right? All the parables of being humble, right? I'm not supposed to expose the good. Some more quotes. We can say to him, I have fallen, forgive me. At the same time, however, let us have the sense that he loves us and that he receives us with tenderness and love and forgives us. He looks much more at what we are than what we do. And we are, in his eyes, what we sincerely want to be for him. Yeah, that one's amazing. He looks much more at what we are than what we do. And this is the part that gets you. And we are, in his eyes, what we sincerely want to be for him. Did everyone get that quote? Can you read it? I don't know if you can read it. I'm not going to be able to read it again, so hopefully you can read it. And we are, in his eyes, what we want to be for him. We are, in his eyes, what we want to be for him. How does God see us? The way we want to be seen. Like, imagine a loving father or a loving mother who looks at you and you can do no wrong. And they see you as what you want to be, as the way you want to be seen. And they see everything beautiful in you. This is the characteristic of God, and this is the characteristic of saints. The saints only see good in people. They only see beauty. They don't see ugly. Why? Because they're like their Father. They're the image and likeness of God, who only sees the beauty that's in us. Okay, I'll continue. So where does shame come from? Well, you guys know the story, right? This is Adam and Eve being dispelled from paradise when they sinned. Now, whether or not they ate a pomegranate or an apple or a guava, I don't know. It says they ate a forbidden fruit. Just break it down. They did something they shouldn't have done. They broke God's will. And they broke God's will, and God had told them, not if you eat of this fruit, I'll kill you. He didn't say that. What did he say? He said, if you eat of this fruit, death you shall surely die. Because I am life. And if you detach from me, then by definition, you have no life. And so when you separate from me, which is really the definition of sin, you separate from life. You know, it's like being in the desert and saying, I don't want water. All right, you're probably going to die soon. I just don't want the water. Okay. You can choose to say, I don't want water. That's your choice. You can choose to say, I don't want life. So shame came from Adam and Eve from the very beginning. And it's very important to think about why they were cast out of the garden. They were cast out of the garden not for sinning, but if you remember, it says, what? Lest they eat. How many trees were in the? There were two trees that were forbidden. The tree of knowledge of good and evil, which is the one they ate, and then the tree of life. And it says in the Bible that the God cast them out of the garden lest they eat from the tree of life after they'd eaten the tree of, the bad tree. So God cast them out of the garden because he didn't want them to stay in that state forever. He's like, I need to give you a chance to repent. He didn't throw them out because you did bad and now I'm going to punish you. He says, I don't want you to live like this. You're not meant to live like this. You're not meant to live in shame. I don't want you to have shame. So the first Adam brings what? Shame. So what's the problem? We need to get rid of the shame. So then the second Adam comes. And what does the second Adam do? takes shame in every way possible. He takes betrayal. He takes humiliation. He takes spitting. He takes slapping. He even takes nakedness. That's shame. Even nakedness. I mean, you imagine, if some terrorists came in and, they took Amba Serapion or the priest or whatever, the church, they said, take your clothes off. Stand in front of the church, naked. Just to humiliate him and shame him. And then they did that to Christ. Hang on the cross, naked. Shame. So Christ came and he took that shame and he said, I'll take the shame. And shame is isolation, and God doesn't want us to be shamed. And this is Satan's weapon against us. He isolates us. He uses shame against us. He says, you're the only one. Don't tell anybody about this. No one else is like you. No one else is this bad. No one else does these things. What if your friends found out? What if your priest found out? What if your parents found out? Sound familiar? He says it to all of us. And we're all isolated from one another. And that's why in the Orthodox Church, we believe in the Eucharist, which means what? We are a body. You can't isolate cells from one another in a body. It doesn't work, right? If you take my pancreas out and say, okay, now go ahead and function. I don't even know what a pancreas does, but whatever it does. Just say, function, pancreas, do your thing. Pancreas can't function by itself. It has to be with the other organs. So when I take one of you and I isolate you, I immediately do what? I kill you, right? If I take a kidney out of a body and I put it on the table, what am I doing? I'm killing it. Jesus tried to use the exact same metaphor at a very simple level. What did he say? He said it and you kind of go, okay, duh. What did he say? If you cut a branch off from the tree, it dies. And I'm sure all the farmers who they're like, farmers, they're like, okay, you're a smart one, right? Well, of course. But yet, here we are, 2022, and we're being isolated, and we're being removed from the tree, and we're being cut off from the rest of the nutrients that come out, and the branch dies, and the part of the body dies. So Satan's game to us is isolation. Don't let Christ in. Don't let other people in. Don't become a part of this body. They're all bad anyway. Everyone in church is a hypocrite anyway. The priest doesn't know what he's talking about anyway. It's all just traditional and oh woes anyway. It's all stupid anyway. Don't let him in. Right? And as long as we can keep the door up, whether it be shame or guilt or anger or bitterness or my dad's a jerk or whatever the reason Abuna is a fraud, whatever reason Satan has put in your head, it works. Stay isolated. Stay by yourself. Don't be part of a community. And so through one man came shame. Adam manifested nakedness. And that's why the first thing that Adam noticed was he was naked. And then through Christ, my nakedness is covered. He takes the shame in his nakedness, and he even gave them skins to cover. Remember this story? So Adam was naked. What did he do to fix it? He tied fig leaves together, right? Seems like a reasonable solution. And then God came along and said, no, I'm going to cover you with what? Skins. Remember this story? And so why did he cover him with skins? How do you cover someone with a skin? Where'd you get the skin? A sacrifice. So I'm going to cover your shame not by the works of your hands. You can't cover your shame. You can't sew together fig leaves. You can't go to a therapist. You can't cover your shame with you. I cover your shame. The sacrifice covers the shame. Which sacrifice? At that time, an animal sacrifice, an Old Testament sacrifice, a lamb sacrifice. And now we know that that's just pointing to his sacrifice. So the only way we cover the shame that we have is God covers it. Right? In fact, in the prayer of thanksgiving, what do we say? We thank you for you have covered us. And what are we talking about? All the stuff we do that no one knows about. And so the only thing that covers our shame is him. And then he says, I'll take the shame. Put it on me, and then I'll cover you like a skin, like putting on a coat. Slay me, I'll be the sacrifice, and then I'll cover you. Right? In fact, even the story of Cain and Abel, you kind of think, why was that story happen like that? One of them offered fruits and vegetables as a sacrifice. The product of what? His work, his handiwork, right? He's a farmer. And then Abel offered what? An animal sacrifice. And God accepted the animal sacrifice. And you're like, okay, that's kind of mean. Like Cain was trying, he offered some cucumbers, I don't know, right? But he was offering his own work. And God's saying, it's not by your own work that you'll be delivered. It's my work. I cover you. And all you have to do is do what? Open the door and let me in. And then I cover you. Opening the door is very hard to do. That's the hardest part of Christianity, is letting God in. Because you have to let down your guard. And you have to make it complete. And it's scary. Because you don't know where he takes you. And you don't know what he's going to do. And you don't know what you're going to find. But that's the trust. Right? That's the trust Peter had when he climbed out of the boat. It's crazy trust. It's that kind of trust. God says, hey, come walk on the water. And Peter showed us what kind of crazy trust you have to have. Like, all right, hold my hand. Let's do this. It's beautiful. Okay. How do I fix the shame? He has to cover me. How? I have to let him in. I have to let him into my body through the Eucharist. Shame is known by self-condemnation. It leads to isolation. It leads to condemnation and attacking of others. It makes us lash out. And so one thing we know when I see someone lashing out and someone, you know these people, right? The angry people, the hateful people, the people say the bad things about everybody. What do they have? They have pain, and they have shame, and they have something going on in their life. Most of what people say to you, most of the bad things people say to you have nothing to do with you, and they have everything to do with something that's going on inside them, or something that's going on in their life. Remember that. And offer people a grace. Debating whether I should tell you a story. One time, one of my sons came home and he was just angry and throwing a fit and yelling at everybody and just fire, right? You guys can guess who it is. And everyone's like, you're an idiot and shut up and blah, 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 and all the good things that we say in our home. And it took me a second. I'm just looking, I'm like, what the heck is freaking, right? Stupid kid, right? And then I walk up to him and I go, what happened at school today? And he said, these kids picked on me and they made fun of me and they wouldn't sit with me and they mocked me. Like, there it is. So it has nothing to do with the fact that, this person ate out of this plate and this person put their dish over here and you took too much of the turkey. That's not the problem. The problem is 4 hours earlier, kids had mocked him and made fun of him. That situation is repeated in everyone's life. Right? That's why we lash out. We get shamed. We get hurt. The devil uses that against us. He makes us isolated. He puts us in pain, and then we inflict that pain upon other people, like a hatred. The expression, misery loves company. Okay, I'll stop now. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Jason?
So he enters through the Eucharist, but sometimes I feel like after taking communion, like I go back and it's just like I ate some bread and I drank some wine. Like, what should I do, like after taking the communion?
That's a very good question. So the communion, the feeling of communion isn't magic, and it isn't something that you're going to perceive with your lips. And it's a function of the build-up towards the communion. So it's really a function of like my prayers that day in the liturgy. And then it's even a function of my preparation for communion the day before. Like one of the beautiful things we have in the church is Tazbihah. And it's this time where the night before you can just get in the mood, right? And flush everything of that week away. You know, and then you stay up late Saturday night and you just and then you go to bed and it's still ringing in your ears. And I remember when I was in college, I couldn't imagine going to Eucharist the next day without being at Tazbihah the night before. Like it's your time. Saturday night is kind of your time to say, okay, I'm going to put everything behind me, everything of the week, and I'm just going to focus now. And so what you do is you will learn, and God will give you that ability if you seek it. So when you ask God and you say, put me there, like a beggar, and you ask a lot, God does it slowly. There's no magic, there's no poof, there's no confetti, right? But it's a very slow. And then every once in a while, you'll have a day where it's like, wow, that was something else, right? And you won't keep having those days. God isn't going to let you have that much candy, right? He's going to spread them out. And in fact, the saints talk a lot about how he gives the candy and then he says, okay, now work for it. So, but to answer your point, ask. And it's hard work, especially during liturgy, to focus the whole time. I'll say personally, like I have to close my eyes and I can't like even speak. I don't even like to sing. I just close my eyes and I just listen because I'm so easily distracted. And it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort. And some days will be good and some days will be bad, and that's okay. Anybody else? Any other questions? Yes?
Answer the question he asked earlier.
Which question did he ask earlier?
He asked is it okay to feel shame?
Is it okay to what?
To feel shame, I think.
I think shame is a natural consequence of doing something I shouldn't. But I would say no. I would say God doesn't want me to be shamed. I would say that God wants me to get up and say, you're my son and you're my daughter and I love you the way you are. So I don't want you to feel ashamed. I mean, I imagine if, a little child breaks something on accident, knocks into some vase and breaks it, whatever. Right now, if he's Egyptian, parents are going to hit him, right? But if he's good parents, they're going to... And the kid's crying. And the kid's like, I'm so sorry I broke it. I can't believe I broke it. And the kid's sobbing, and he's 5. Is that healthy? You have to stop that kid. You have to hug him, tell him I love you, don't even worry about it, here's some candy, let's go watch a movie, let's go watch a cartoon. If the kid's sobbing uncontrollably and shamed that he broke a vase because he bumped into it and he's 5, you can't let that happen. Right? Throw your arms around that kid and you say, oh, Habibi, it's nothing. I hated that vase anyway. It's ugly. My mother-in-law got it for me and I never liked it. right? Or something like that. So God doesn't want us to be shamed. That's a consequence, that's a feeling we have, but then God says, no, I want to cover the shame. I'll take the shame. It's sort of like confession, right? Think about what confession is. What's confession? The wage of sin is death. So someone made a sin, someone's supposed to die, right? And so Jesus comes along and says what? I'll die instead. So you sinned, and he says, let them kill me. I'll take it. And that's what he does. He says, let me die instead. I'll take the death. I'll take the blows. So he doesn't want us to die for the sin. He would rather absorb it himself. Yep.
So what other ways can you open the door other than communion?
I mean, communion is the sacramental door opening, right? But you can take communion all day, every week, and if you haven't opened yourself and made a conscious personal decision to open yourself up, then communion is just, it's nice, but it's not. And so at some point we, as people, have to relent. You have to just give up. Say, it's you, God. It's not me. And I think all of us try to hold on. And at different stages of our life, we hold on in different ways. So you may give up when you're 16, and then when you're 22, you're like, okay, well, no. And then you give up at 22, and you're like, at 25, yeah, but no, I got this, right? And so, and we even see this with parents and kids, right? So like, when I go tell one of my friends, I say, my kid, he's messing this up, and I'm really worried about him, and he's doing this and that. Like, oh, no, you got to pray. Just pray, and God will take care of it. And then I say, and then his kid starts messing up. And next, he's freaked out. And he's like, I'm going to take him to this doctor. I'm going to take this therapy. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this and this. I'm like, oh, what happened to pray? He's like, no. This is my kid. Don't give me pray. It's my kid now. See the difference? So when it gets real, you hold on. And that holding on is the dangerous part. So when I say letting God in, it's not a one-step shop. It's not a one-stop shop, right? It's not a single moment. It keeps happening. Because I've let him into this part of my life, but you know what? Medical school is mine. Or I let him in that part, but this marriage thing is mine. Or this kid is mine, or this car is mine, or this job is mine. And then what happens is God very gently, it's like when you see a little kid and he's clutching his toy, and he won't give it up and he won't share it with anybody, and he's like, mine. What do we do? What do good parents do? They walk over and they say, baby, can I just see that really quick? We're going to let him share it now. No, he can't share my toy. Yeah, he's going to share it now. Which toy do you like the most? That one? That's the one we're going to share. There it is. Because I can't let him stay in that state. And so what we do is we're constantly, these things come up and then we grab. And then we forget that God fixed that thing in my life. Right? And we once again forget. And then we start over again. And then God gently pulls it out of our hand and says, no, even this. I mean, the hardest lesson for parents to learn, you guys are learning, my friendships, I'll put in God's hand. School, I'll put in God's hand. College, I'll put in God's hand. My life, I'll put in God's hand. And then you have, a wife or a husband, and you're like, okay, I'm going to, and then all of a sudden you can't handle that. And you're like, okay, I'll put that in God's hand. The hardest thing for parents is when they have to let go of their kids. Because this is something I have controlled for 16, 17 years. Okay? And then you've got to let that go. And so now you start over, right? You got to let him in again. You know, I've let him into this part of my life, I've let him in this part of my life, but these are my kids. Like, yeah, my kid wants to go do this. And like, yeah, let him go. And like, I won't. And I've heard parents say that. No. I was laughing at something else, but yes. Anyway. To answer your question. Ish.
Yeah, that was really good.
But it wasn't the answer to your question.
No,
It's a good answer to another question.
no, it's an answer. Okay, I'm kidding. That was good. It's follow-up question.
Mm.
I think I was looking more for a practical look, like I know mentally I have to declare like this is for God, you know, but like what does that look like in my life? Like I don't know. I'm having
It depends on the thing, right? And so obviously we're talking hypotheticals here, and so I'm trying to guess what you're talking about. But I think the way it looks is I'm equally happy with either outcome. And either outcome is the outcome I want and the outcome I don't want. That's when I know I've let him in. Right? When my joy is the same regardless of the outcome. It's a high bar. You know, it's not like, oh, do I get a red car or blue car? I'm happy with either. See how good of a Christian I am? No, that's not what I'm talking about. Car accident, no car accident. I'm happy with both of those. Cancer, no cancer. I'm equally happy with both of those. You know, like Job said after his kids died and his cattle died and his sheep died, he said, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away, blessed be the name of the Lord.
So how do you get to that state of mind though? Like you can say,
Oh yeah, don't just say it.
I know, like how do you get there though?
It hurts. You know, the thing I always say, right? If we die before we die, then we won't die when we die. Right, so this is the death. It's death by little pieces. But don't just say it. That's garbage. It's very hard. I don't know how to do it. I'm just saying that's what the books say. Any other questions? Good questions, comments? All right. Glory be to God forever, amen. Let's stand up and pray. Make us worthy to say with all thanksgiving, our Father who art in heaven.